Hey everyone, welcome to the Explainer. So today, we're going to be investigating a massive historical mystery. We're looking at how the world actually changes over time. A lot of people just assume history is this series of random, sudden jumps. But we're going to put on our detective hats, look closely at the chronological evidence, and uncover the real story of how we actually arrived at modern times. Get ready, because we are about to bust some major historical myths.
Okay, let's dive into this. Our prime suspect today is this wild idea that modern times just happened overnight because of one single historical event. It's so tempting to think someone just invented a specific machine, or, I don't know, a specific war ended and boom, suddenly everyone woke up living in the modern world. But as historians, we really need to look at the chronological evidence. And let me tell you, our evidence is going to shatter this myth completely. Because complex societal change, it simply doesn't happen at the flip of a switch.
So if it's not a sudden overnight flip of a switch, what actually is it? Well, that brings us to our essential question for this explainer. Why do new ideas sometimes transform whole societies? I really want you to keep this question right at the forefront of your mind as we sift through the clues today. We aren't just looking at what happened in the past. We are actively trying to figure out the why. Like, why are certain new ideas powerful enough to completely reshape the way humans live, work, and govern themselves?
To prove that getting to the modern world was actually a long, continuous process, let's take a look at our timeline of historical eras. Notice how we don't just magically start in modern times, right? We span centuries through Unit 1, the Middle Ages, then transition into Unit 2, a changing world, long before we ever reach Unit 3, modern times. This structure right here is our first huge piece of evidence. It proves that historical transformation is a marathon, not a sprint. You literally cannot understand the final destination without walking the long, gradual path it took to get there.
Let's move to the beginning and see how this evolution actually builds. We're starting with the Middle Ages. Now, this era is often mistakenly called the Dark Ages, right? As if absolutely nothing was happening and the whole world was just sitting around waiting for modernity to arrive. But our historical evidence shows us that this era was actually all about planting the seeds. The Middle Ages were incredibly packed with innovation. This was the critical, foundational period where the basic ingredients for our modern world were quietly being gathered.
Just look at the incredible geographic diversity of these early changes. While we might often just focus on one part of the world, our sources show that multiple civilizations were simultaneously generating absolutely incredible new ideas. Over in China, they were producing gunpowder, the magnetic compass, and printed books. Meanwhile, in Africa south of the Sahara, societies were developing entirely new forms of music and dance. And it doesn't stop there. The Japanese were busy developing a constitution alongside new forms of art and poetry, while Europeans were taking their very first crucial steps toward representative government. Innovation was literally happening everywhere, laying a truly global foundation.
So, you might be wondering, how exactly do we transition from those scattered, global seeds to a connected modern world? Well, that massive shift happens with the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. You can think of these as giant cultural and intellectual explosions. These movements were driven by radical new ideas about art, science, and the whole role of the individual. Our sources specifically point out that these profound intellectual developments were the exact things that brought the Middle Ages to an end. It was the new ideas that were the real catalysts here.
Now, when we compare the different causes of historical change, a really clear picture emerges. On one side, we have intellectual developments. So this is culture, philosophy, and Enlightenment thinking. Essentially, this is the slow process of changing people's minds. But then, on the other side, we have scientific and technological developments, like the actual physical machines of industrialization. And here is the key takeaway. To truly transform a society, you absolutely need both. You can't have sweeping physical and technological change without the philosophical shifts that allow people to first imagine a totally new way of living.
All of these centuries of ideas, philosophies, and early inventions finally bring us to Unit 3, modern times. And this, my friends, is where the change absolutely accelerates. The slow, steady buildup of the Middle Ages and that massive intellectual awakening of the Renaissance, they suddenly erupt into massive societal shifts. The world literally stops walking and starts sprinting. The events packed into this final era fundamentally reshaped the globe at just a dizzying speed compared to the centuries that came before it.
Let's look closely at the cascading effects of this sudden acceleration. We can clearly trace how the French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution brought rapid, massive changes to Europe and the United States. But as you'll see, the momentum didn't just stop there. Not even close. Those revolutions created this intense domino effect, fueling things like imperialism and nationalism that cascaded directly into massive global conflicts. We're talking World War I, World War II, and eventually the Cold War. Everything is deeply connected. The ideas and machines built in one era literally set the stage for modern global diplomacy and conflict in the very next.
And this brilliantly illustrates the interconnected web of history through cause and effect. Let's walk through a worked example together. So, step 1, you start with new ideas, right? Things like the Enlightenment, emphasizing human rights and reason. Then, step 2, those ideas eventually cause a revolution, like the French Revolution, which aggressively challenges old, outdated systems of government. And finally, step 3, that political upheaval, combined with brand new technology, leads to global change. Industrialization sweeps the globe and officially ushers in modern times. It is a tightly interconnected web, definitively proving that modern change was never, ever just one isolated event.
So how do we make sure we don't just fall back into the trap of oversimplifying history? Well, we use what I like to call the lenses of history. To truly understand these massive transformations, we have to look through multiple lenses at the exact same time. We've got economics, meaning how things are produced and consumed. Then there's culture and identity. We also have science and technology, and of course, government and conflict. Think about it. If you only look at the wars, you completely miss the technology. If you only look at the economy, you miss the culture. Complex societal change absolutely requires us to use all these lenses to see the full picture. And that brings us to our exit question. We've solidly proven today that modern times didn't happen overnight. It took centuries of continuous new ideas and technological shifts blending together across the globe to build the world we live in right now. So, I want you to look at the world around you today. If that historical framework holds true, what current new ideas or technologies are actively transforming our society right now? Seriously, think about it. What will the historians of tomorrow point to as the causes of our next great shift? Thanks so much for watching this explainer, and I'll see you in the next one.